Uh,
Do you have
Not
questions?
really.
No? How are you feeling?
No. Well, I mean, I would grill you ahead of time on what we're going to talk about, but let's just wing it.
Yeah, you can't grill me.
Yeah.
What's the fun in that if I
Yeah.
can't keep you on your toes?
Yeah. Keep me
Um,
on my toes.
cool. Well, this will be fun because
Been
we've
a
known
long
it.
time since we chatted, so I want to catch up anyways.
I know, and we've known each other for
Regardless if there was a podcast or not.
exactly.
I'm
Eh,
glad I have a chance to chat with you.
Me too. And this is my excuse for having the podcast because I get to get caught up with old friends and just put it under the guise of podcasting.
It's a good
Um,
excuse.
we go way back,
Way, way, way back.
my fellow
In fact,
Canadian.
I sometimes I feel like we're like almost siblings because we have like, you
There's,
know, such very similar backgrounds and stuff like that. I don't know.
yeah. And you were there when Charles and I were falling in love. I knew you before I knew my husband, actually.
Yep.
This is fun.
I
All right.
was there when this strange man got off the plane on the runway and said he had just met you in, was it Norway or Finland or something like
Yep,
that?
in Norway.
I'm like, what's this guy doing here?
Yeah. What are your intentions?
Yeah, exactly. That's another one of the like sibling thing. I felt like I was your older brother or something like
Yeah.
that. It was
Actually, it
funny.
did kind of feel like that. Well, let's take it back to the beginning. So I know you're a Canadian. I'm going to try to leave all the things I know about you out of it so that it's all you coming from your mouth. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. So, where were you born and raised?
Calgary, Alberta.
Okay. In, I'm dating you now.
In in what?
What year?
1967. I'm
Got it.
actually no longer a Canadian. In April of 2024, I became a US citizen. So technically, I will always be a Canadian because I was born there and have a birth certificate and all that stuff. But I became a US citizen so I could vote here and participate after living here for 20 years. I figured it was time to stop being a slackard and get involved. But
You
yeah,
can't.
I was born in Calgary, Alberta, and went to high school and university there, and was a guide on the Bow River, and that's my background.
Can't you have dual citizenship?
People ask me that, and in the eyes of the U.S., no, you can't. They don't recognize dual citizen. You take the pledge, and you can only pledge allegiance to one country. You know what I mean? Like they don't recognize it. But it's true that if I ever went back to Canada, all I have to do is flash my birth certificate, and they would accept me with open arms. And I do know some Canadians that still maintain their Canadian passport,
Yeah.
but the US frowns on it.
Got it. Learn something new every day. Okay, so growing up in Alberta, let's talk about how you got into fishing.
Well, my dad is not much of a fisherman. My dad was a school teacher and not much of an outdoorsman or anything. I think what really got me interested in fishing was the underwater world of Jacques Cousteau. You know those old black and white TV shows? When I was a little kid, I used to watch those all the time, and I would just fascinated by like what was going on under the water and the fish, and I just thought that to me, that's like the earliest inkling that I was fascinated with, like what's going on under the water. It's like a secret world under there.
Yeah.
And then from there, it kind of blossomed into a hobby with aquariums.
Hmm.
Like there was a time when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, I had like all these aquariums and I had all these tropical fish from the Amazon River and, all this stuff. And I would just sit there and watch the fish and watch their behavior and stuff like that. And uh, talked my dad into taking me fishing a couple of times where I was just like trying to figure it out on my own. Um, but I really didn't get into fishing seriously until I was about 16 years old, got a driver's license, and I could drive down to the Bow River and like really take myself and just dive into it. The way I learned to fly fish is basically from Fly Fisherman magazine. My mother got me a subscription to the magazine for my 16th birthday. And I also went to Country Pleasures Fly Shop very regularly and rented VHS tapes um, from Jim McLennan.
This is amazing. The whole
Yeah,
thing is about to come full circle too. So your parents were together. What did your mom do? Was she also in the education system?
she had a business of she was in the daycare business. She owned some daycares.
Got it. Did you go to the same school your dad was teaching at?
Unfortunately, for 1 year, I did.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that was a little tough because I was a bit of a hellraiser, and yeah, it's always a conflict, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I I wore a Sex Pistols shirt that said "F the Queen" to school one day, and the principal sent me home while my dad was a teacher at the same school.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that being a bit of a
Yeah.
problem. It's a conflict there. What about your fishing? So you go on foot. I'm assuming at 16 you weren't rowing a drift boat.
No, no, you could just drive down, and I fished inside the city limits a lot. I didn't really realize that there was a sort of catch and release fishing area downstream, so I just went to the river that was closest to me. So, like anyone that lives in Calgary, they know the Crowchild Trail Bridge and the I think it's called the Ninth Street Bridge that goes into downtown Calgary. That's where I knew the river was, so I'd go and park in those areas and fish around those bridges and stuff.
Yeah, it's not like back then people were hopping on, Google Earth to be able to see access points.
Yeah, exactly. That's just where I knew the river was, so I could go there and park. And it's not like I was a bridge troll, but looking back on it, it's pretty funny. I ended up fishing under bridges a lot.
So reading the magazine, you're a teenager at the time. Who was the editor of the magazine?
John Randolph.
Can you tell us? We are going to talk about uh, the magazine a little bit here, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
People will know at this point that you're the editor, that you're the current editor because of the write-up. I'll have read it in the opening sequence of the podcast. But let's talk about its history. When did Fly Fisherman magazine start?
It started in 1969. At the time, there was no other fly fishing magazine in existence. There was, the big outdoor magazines did had fly fishing content, of course, but then this guy Don Zahner had the brainchild of starting a fly fishing specific magazine that would only cover fly fishing, and he did it with the help of Cortland and Orvis and some other people. And they hatched this plan in a lodge on the banks of the Big Hole River on a trip to Montana. So that guy, Don Zahner, there's a really only three editor publishers of the magazine. Don Zahner sort of ran the magazine from 1969 till about 1980. And then from about 1979 to 2007, it was John Randolph who was in charge. John hired me in 1996, and I became the editor in chief in 2007. So I've been here since like 28 years or something like that at the magazine, which is crazy.
Is that the longest anyone's
1996 was a long time
It's a
ago.
long time ago. Is that the longest anyone's been there? I'm doing the math on each of the guys
It
before
is.
you. Yeah.
Yep.
Are you the longest time staff member, let alone editor?
At Fly Fisherman, certainly, but we're part of a bigger company, and there's only two or three people that have been with our larger company for longer. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's even in the fly fishing business, you watch people go from one company to another or different publications to another. People don't stay with one publication for all that long. It's quite a streak.
Yeah.
Actually, it feels good to me because it's been such a part of my life, like since I was 16 years old. If you look back in old, and also when I was a fly fishing guide, I advertised in Fly Fisherman magazine. So I can look back at the old issues and I was like, oh, I have like an ad in that. Or I remember that's the one that, was out when I was like, graduating high school or stuff like that. Just feels like it's part of my life. It is because it is part of my life.
Okay, take me back to being a teenager then. So, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, when I was a teenager, I never even dreamed that there could be a job or that fly fishing was an industry. You know what I mean? So I had other aspirations when I was little. I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau and an astronaut and stuff like that. I guess when I really started to think seriously about my career, again, I owe a lot to Jim McLennan because, he was sort of the grand poobah of the Bow River, and I had read all his books. Like I studied Blue Ribbon Bow over and over again. And then he was published in Fly Fisherman magazine. And man, I thought this guy is a god. He's publishing books. He's in Fly Fisherman magazine. He comes from the United States. I was really impressed with that. And so I went to journalism school with the idea that I would be uh, work in the newspaper business, be a journalist, and that one day I would do some freelance articles, and one day I would be published in Fly Fisherman. That was my career goals at one time.
So, the guiding, did you do that in the summers around your school?
Yeah,
And you started your own
exactly.
business?
I didn't. I bought the Bow River Company, which was the original guiding company on the bow. I bought it from Peter Chenier. Yeah, I don't know if that name rings a bell, but basically, I believe it was Jim McLennan's original guiding company before he went to Country Pleasures.
This is
But
amazing.
I
All
bought
these
an exi
pieces.
yeah, I bought an existing guiding company that was, already had 4 drift boats and a list of clients and stuff like that. I jumped right into it. Do you know how I bought the company?
No.
I sold my comic book collection.
What do you mean? You were a comic
Well,
guy?
yeah, me and my buddy in high school, we collected comics and stuff like that. And I had like a whole run of Amazing Spider-Man, even like Amazing Fantasy number 15. And I had like all these old Golden Age comics, like first appearance of Aquaman and first appearance of Lex Luthor, like old Batmans and stuff like that. I just had boxes and boxes of all these comics going back to the 1940s, actually.
What would they be worth now?
Oh man, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think. Just those Spider-Mans. It was before there was a Spider-Man movie or anything like that. But I think I got like 20,000 bucks for it or something like that at the time. But I bet you just those Spider-Mans probably be $250,000 now.
That's amazing. Okay, so you sell everything. You are obviously really passionate at this point to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
wanted to jump right into it.
and you managed other guides?
Uh I don't know if manage the right word. You know how it works. It's a contract basis. So, if I had 3 boats out on the river, I would contract out to 2 other guides who previously worked with Peter or just people that I ran into over time. So, uh, I don't know if you know Ted Horechka or there's a bunch of guys that I used to work with back in the day.
That's a lot different than just working out of a fly shop. So even though you're doing it in the summer, was that your long-term goal? Did you want that to become your full-time career on the water?
Yeah, at one time, but you do it for a couple of years and suddenly realize I cannot do this forever.
Yeah.
Uh, just guiding in general is tough. I don't want to make it out like the Bow River is tougher than any other place, but I mean, long hours and the day goes so long, and there's places like the Bighorn River or whatever they fish bankers hours. They're done at 5 o'clock, so the guides can have a life, which is fair. But the way I did it, I was out like on the river till 10 o'clock, rowing out in the dark, not getting home till midnight. And I had little kids on the way and just realized, yeah, I can't do 80 days in a row getting home at midnight and then getting up and making lunches and stuff like that. It's just, It's hard, real
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, it is. But it's nice that you know that, especially as someone who works with so many guides and people in the quote unquote industry. So at least you recognize and appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
So writing, where does the writing come in?
no, I guess it's just something that I was good at in school. I was kind of an artsy kid. I read comic books and I took all the Shakespeare classes in university and just enjoyed the creative side of writing and stuff like that. And combined that with my passion for fly fishing, and I loved reading fly fishing magazines or fly fishing books and stuff like that, and it was just very aspirational. So that's what I wanted to do for years.
And who did you submit your first article to?
John Randolph.
So you went straight for it because there wouldn't have been a Canadian fly fishing magazine at the time.
Well, there was the Alberta Fishing Guide,
Oh,
which
okay.
I read every year, but they only did a little bit of fly fishing. Jim always had an article in there. Basically, I was just waiting for my opportunity to like get a good topic that would catch the eye of Fly Fisherman magazine. At the time, one of my best friend and fishing partner, Greg McDermott, he started a website called the Virtual Fly Shop. We were both at the University of Calgary,
Right.
so he started this website, and it was the very first fishing website on the internet. I mean, there's no pictures or anything. This was in 1994. There's no photos or anything. And I worked with him on that. I remember when Netscape 1.0 came out and we delivered the very first picture of a trout that was ever seen on the internet. And it was a rainbow trout from the Crow's Nest River. Uh, so that was Greg's project. He started the virtual fly shop and all that. But I wrote a story about it called The World Wide Web of Fly Fishing. And I sent it to John Randolph at Fly Fisherman magazine. And he got back to us and said, "This is exactly what I've been waiting for." So that story was sort of like my foot in the door. And then what happened is that Fly Fisherman magazine bought that website from Greg McDermott, hired Greg to run it. Uh, and then that was my foot in the door to get hired to help with content. So
Holy.
it,
So you were
it was kind of
curating
a,
content.
yeah, well, I got in on the internet boom, basically. So my start wasn't working on the print side of things, it was working on the website. For Fly Fisherman magazine.
Right. Okay. And so then at that point, were you on salary? Were you a full-time
Yeah. Oh
employee?
yeah. Yep.
S
Full-time employee. We had an office with like 6 people in Fort Collins, Colorado. We were doing all sorts of internet development, like building websites for Scott fly rods, high drift boats, Sims, all kinds of stuff like that in 96, 97, 98. And I was doing the content. But I also happened to be living in Colorado, so John would call on me to do Colorado stories, and so I started getting published, doing stories on like the Frying Pan River, Colorado River, you know.
Yeah. This is amazing. I did not know any of this. I'm so happy that we're finally picking through your timeline. Okay, what happens next? And just before we go there, from a virtual stance, what was the goal of the online of this website? Was it to sell things or was it to publish content? What was its point back then? It was still early days.
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. They were trying to figure it out. Like at that time, Fly Fisherman was owned by this huge company called Media that had almost 300 magazines, like New York Magazine and 17 Magazine, Modern Bride, like all these big magazines, and none of them had a website. So it was the only website in the entire company. So we were sort of like a test tube baby for quite a few years where they tried to figure out like, what is the internet? What are we know we have to be in on this, but we don't know what it's about. So I think it's fair to say we did like a bunch of experimenting. We developed an auction site before eBay was invented or created. We had online auction tools, and people were auctioning rods and reels and tackle and stuff like that. We had a huge forum before there was a Facebook. Uh, we did like private work for all these other companies and built their websites for them because, these small fly fishing companies, they had no idea how to develop a website. There wasn't companies doing it, so we did it for them, just sort of specializing in fly fishing. So we
Wow.
were doing a lot of things like website development, auction sites, forums, all kinds of stuff.
Who was your big competition back then? Was there one?
Competition online.
Yeah, and also in the magazine world, if you guys were the first.
Online, there was no competition. Literally, we're like 2 or 3 years we were doing this. There was no other fly fishing websites at all. Like
Yeah.
we were the only place. So that's why we, dominated everything. And everyone was coming there to see what was happening. And it was an interesting time. I ran into a lot of there's a lot of youngsters who were on that forum. And I say youngsters, they were the same age as me, but 25 years later, we get a good laugh because a lot of them turned out to be like Whitey, who's a rep in the color in the Rocky Mountains, and a bunch of people like that. It was a fun
Yeah.
time. That's like I met so many people like Diane Bristol from Sims. She
Hmm.
would come to our office and we were like working on the Sims website, and it was a fun time. We were both young back then. Sims was getting their very first website. Her parents lived in Fort Collins. It was a real incubator for a lot of friendships that would last now almost 3 decades.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Fly Fisherman was so cutting edge. And then with the magazines, who was the competing magazine at the time? Let's say mid 90s.
The big three would have been Fly Fisherman, Fly Rod and Reel, and American Angler.
And how many of those are still around?
Just Fly Fisherman.
I
Of
had,
those, I mean, Fly Rod and Reel and American Angler have both ceased to publish.
yeah.
There was also a couple of saltwater fly fishing magazines. They're gone. Uh, a lot of things have changed over the years. There's new people come, new people go, but we've been here I mean, it's going to be 60 years pretty soon.
We've got to make mention of the internet at that time because it was risky business. I think it was Kaufman's who went to do some online stuff, and just the way that they had planned their website, from what I'd heard, word on the street was that that was actually the downfall of the business. There were a few businesses that did try to get in early. Some of them may have been too early, and it actually ended up leading to their demise. Did you guys ever run that risk, or were you financially stable enough that you could be an experiment?
Uh, Yeah, in retrospect, it wasn't that risky. I mean, it was a pretty big company that was behind us, and they were trying to figure out what to do with the internet. At the end of it all, though, they decided to go a completely different direction. They decided to buy a big internet company called about.com, and that just turned into a complete fiasco. But basically, that was the end of our test tube period.
Got it. But now you were still secure enough with the company at that point to move on to the next department, I guess. Where does your timeline take us from
Yeah,
there?
and when the sort of internet bubble burst in 2001, our internet office in Fort Collins closed down, but John Randolph offered me a job in Pennsylvania to just come and be a staff editor at Fly Fisherman magazine at the print side. So 2001, I moved from Colorado to Pennsylvania and started work on the print side of things exclusively, and been there ever since.
Why are they based in PA?
Yeah, a lot of just historical reasons. Basically, the guy that started it, that's he back in 1969, he lived in Vermont, and he got bought by a larger company that moved to Harrisburg. A lot of murkiness, but Pennsylvania is actually a great state for in our office where I am right now. Same office as Bow Hunter magazine, and it's a big state for fly fishing, fishing in general, and for bow hunting. Like
Yeah.
it's a huge hunting and fishing state. Uh, for us, in terms of readership, Pennsylvania is probably, I think, our number seven biggest state in terms of readers. A lot of people here, and a lot of them fly fish. There's a lot of little small streams and stuff. Do I wish it was in Montana? Probably. But
Can't have it all.
I've found a lot of cool places here. And
Yeah.
it took me a long time because I'm stubborn, but I've really learned to love Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Look, PA is a great spot. I love Michigan. My dirty little secret in that area is I love Michigan. I think I could live in Michigan.
Michigan's very cool. It's very Canadian-esque.
Yes, it is. It is. Okay, so then how many editors were there? Are there 10 editors at any given time?
Well, when I started in 2001, I think there was three editors. Um, but now I am the only one.
So where does Lonnie Waller work his way into that? Does he predate you? Because I actually
Well, it
didn't know
depends what
he
you
worked with them.
we have contributing editors that are like putting in stories all the time. So yeah, we had people on our masthead that were contributing editors like Lonnie and Lefty and a bunch of other ones. And that just means that they contribute stories. They call us up on the phone and say, "Hey, this is a story you should be covering." So they help guide us editorial, but they're not on staff in the office 9 to 5 every day. It's
How?
actually a very small operation.
Yeah.
It's a big company, so we have a lot of support staff. We have like a big human resources and, a big production team. And, we have a lot of people that work for a whole bunch of magazines. But as far as people that work just on Fly Fisherman magazine, there's only three of us at this current time. Yeah.
Holy, I figured it'd be small, but I figured maybe 10 of you. I didn't think there would be three.
A lot of shared resources. We have in our company, there's 17, in our little section of the company, there's 17 print magazines, two cable TV networks. Um, so there's a lot of shared resources. Like I
Yeah.
don't have to run down to the print shop and print magazines. There's, people for that. They print all of the company's magazine. We have a production department and all that. My job is to just worry about the content and the stories and put them together and have an art director that makes it look great. So it's a very small team
So
and it's
Fly
great.
Fisherman magazine was bought out. Can we talk about that a little bit just for to get people updated on where we are now?
It was bought out.
Wasn't it?
It has been bought out by different organizations several times over the years, but there's been no change here for 6 or 8 years.
So what's the outdoor, because the outdoor channel, let's just talk about the whole conglomerate. Which company is that? Is it outdoor channel?
Um, well, the bigger company is called Cronky Sports and Entertainment, and they own the Denver Nuggets, the Los Angeles Rams, a bunch of sports teams. They own a lot of stuff. It's all privately owned.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Yeah, that's who owns and our company here is called Outdoor Sportsman Group. So it's 17 or 18 print magazines and Outdoor Channel and World Fishing Network are all together under the same umbrella.
Yeah, that's huge. How was that for you? Was it a pretty easy transition?
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. The first few years, nothing really happened because they were their company over there and we were our company over here. But we're finding ways to cooperate and collaborate a lot more, and it's been great.
They're very,
There's a
that's,
lot of resources that I can take advantage of now, like the Outdoor Channel. They do, I mean, I think it's 100 different television shows that they produce and stuff like that. So when I've got film projects and stuff that I want to do for Fly Fisherman magazine, I have like a whole workforce that I can tap into.
Yeah, and there's so much in there that's mainstream that you can help obviously to promote some of the fly fishing side of things.
Yeah. Um, One of the big project I'm working on right now is a documentary on the life of Lefty Cray.
Yeah, actually I wanted to talk to you about that because you've been diving quite a bit into film over the last, it feels like last 8 years. How long have you been doing film for over there?
Yeah, I guess 8 years is probably about right.
And how did that all come to be? Did you just feel like you wanted to take it to a new dimension? You wanted to look deeper into a lot of these stories?
Well, there's parts of the story that you just can't tell in print. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be seen and heard to be experienced, and we're a multimedia company, and I think we're living in a multimedia world. I'm still a big believer in print. I love print. And a lot of our readers do. But I think there needs to be companions. I think Fly Fisherman as a brand just needs to cover all of the angles. So it was a logical extension for us to just be like, um, I guess the first big film we did was One Path on time and fishing. And I just thought at the time, I'm going to do a big story in the magazine. I'm going to go there, put 2 weeks of my life into this project. We have this whole company that has cameramen and producers and stuff like that. Why would I not bring a cameraman and just document this whole thing and make a film? So I guess that's the one where it kind of got started. It just made logical sense because we have all the resources at this company.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's perfect. And you're young enough and cutting edge enough to be able to tie it all together. And you've got a real eye or a real passion for history, I'm assuming just in our correspondence. Am I right with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think one of the major roles of Fly Fisherman, like, is to be the journal of record. We are the original fly fishing magazine. We've been here since the beginning. So we've followed a lot of these people and a lot of these stories from the very beginning. So I think it's our job to continue it and just see everything through to the end. Flip me. History is a big part of fly fishing. I mean, that's why we have all these libraries and talk about Isaac Walton and all these famous people because it's a very learned, well-read, historic passion. And I think it's our job to just continue that, which
Yeah.
is, why you and I ended up working on the Lonnie Waller thing. And I think giving all of these greats the tributes that they deserve is my role in the fly fishing world. Not my only role, but one of my responsibilities, I feel like, because stuff like that is just not getting done in other mediums.
Yeah, I agree. And you're the perfect
Yeah.
person for it. So what are you doing now? What's this film you're working on? Where's it going?
It is a 44-minute documentary on the life of Lefty Cray. It is going to premiere at the Weinberg Center in Frederick, Maryland on March 27th. So we're getting down to crunch time right now. We're in the phase where we're doing like color corrections and transitions and music and all that stuff. I'm pretty excited about the premiere though because it's at a theater that used to be called the Tivoli Theater, and it's where Lefty met his wife in 1951 when he was in the
Oh,
army and she was working the ticket counter.
oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it's like it's Lefty's hometown, and we're going back to his hometown with this big film. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And then does it get aired? Are you guys going to put it on the channel on television?
Yeah. So March 27th, we have like the live audience with a few hundred people. Uh, it's sponsored by Bass Pro, BTT, Costa, and Yeti. Um, and so this live event's going to be a big fundraiser for BTT. So if you buy $100 ticket to see the movie, you get a Bonefish Tarpon Trust membership and a bunch of swag and stuff like that. So it's a big BTT event because that was basically the only conservation organization that Lefty worked with when he was alive. He was big partners with them, with Bonefish and Buccaneers and Bonefish, which you were part of that show too.
Yeah.
And then after the premiere in April, I'm gonna have to use my cheat sheet here. On April 19th, it's on Outdoor Channel is the premiere, and April 24th, it's on World Fishing Network.
Wow, that's really interesting. And
Yeah,
huge, by the way. I remember when you used to have to fight to get fly fishing airtime. So to be able to have those slots is really, really special. Are you going to
yeah,
do this? Sorry, go ahead.
those are just the premiere dates. There's a whole bunch of airings coming up as well.
Yeah. Are you going to do this? You know so many people. Are you going to do this with everybody as we go on?
One of my thoughts is that every time I do one of these, and even when I worked on the Lonnie Waller story with you, I was like, dang it, we shouldn't be doing these after the people pass.
This is what I wanted
It
to
is
say.
so
Can we do it
hard to
while they're
do,
here? Yes. Yes, I
right?
agree.
And
Yes.
I'm just kicking myself. It's so hard to like go back in time and try to get the footage that you need. And one of the sad parts of making the film is like Bob Popovich is, one of Lefty's great friends. And when we sat down to like make this film, we're like, okay, we're definitely going to interview Bob and make him part of the film. Uh, and he passed away. And our plan was to interview Kathy and Barry Beck. And then Kathy passed away. So it's like even while you're in the process of making the film, the people you want in the film are passing away. That's how urgent it is. So yeah,
It's urgent. Please get over to Joan. Well, she just please get to Joan. You're so close. She's right there.
that would be a massive one, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
I'm close to begging for it. So if I can
That's a good
help
idea.
in
I
any way,
love it.
shape, or form, just let me know what I can do to help, please.
Okay.
Well, that's very special. Okay. So you're going to be there. I want to come back to you for a minute in your timeline. And actually, before we do that, because is it safe to say that you'll be there until you retire?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So we've got that out of the way.
I'm not going anywhere.
Let's talk about a little bit some of the obstacles because you are young and people who can see you right now on YouTube can see that you are young. You're not going anywhere. You're a very logical human. You're kind of perfect to be doing all of these, to be doing everything that you're doing right now. I want to talk to you about print, and I know you'll keep it straight with me. Is print dead?
No, of course not.
Can we
I
talk
think
about
print
that?
is in a stronger position than it has been in the last 5 or 10 years. Um, I think, there's been a lot of things that happened, but basically the short story is that we are a great venue for advertisers because our audience is the best audience. People pay for our product. We have uh, like a consumer relationship with them. They're real people. We know their credit card information and they have paid for the magazine. So they have self-identified as being extremely passionate about fly fishing. And until you put your credit card down and pay for that content, you're kind of a wishy-washy about fly fishing. Honestly, you're just a bypasser on Instagram. But when you're willing to pay to be part of an audience or to be part of a group, that makes you a very special person for advertisers to want to reach.
Yeah, good point.
So if you were, one of the big brands in fly fishing, that Fly Fisherman magazine has the best audience of consumers, like people who are passionate about it and are willing to pay for their sport. So from an advertising side, It's very strong. And from the consumer side, every week I hear from people that say, they write me and say, I just love to take the time to sit down and thumb through the pages of the magazine. It's their time. They're not being rushed. They're not being hit with a million ads. If you go into Google, you're searching for something, people are blindsiding you with ads. Uh, when you sit down to read the magazine, it's an experience that you look forward to and cherish, and you set that time aside, and people love it. I know I love it.
I love it too. And I also, just for the record, do not think print is, I know print is not dead. I love print and I want to talk about it a bit. 10 years ago, let's just round it up to 10, when everyone saw Instagram and scrolling and we were hearing that print was dead. Was it always going to be cyclical? A lot of companies didn't make it. And I feel like it was inevitable that we would come back around to people wanting to be able to, like you said, sit down with paper in their hands and read and not have ads popping up in front of their face or distractions or bright lights. Was it always going to be cyclical, do you think? Or was there ever a point where it really was starting to threaten or online presence was starting to threaten print?
People always like to jump on the next new thing that comes along. I think that's just like the human experience. You don't want to miss out on anything. So people jumped on it right away. And I think when some social media first came out, like there was a time on Facebook when, Facebook and Apple were sort of in cahoots to give away people's information. There was a lot of stories about how effective marketing was on Facebook because you could really get to people, but because of all of the privacy controls now, I think that's no longer true. I mean, your iPhone and the social media companies are very separate. So I don't think anyone has a real easy time reaching their target audience on Instagram. And there's tons of problems with that media. Like, is this a legitimate user? Is it a legitimate consumer? There's a lot of fake accounts and people who might have some passing interest in fly fishing, but are these people that you want to target with your $1,000 product? You know what I mean? Are they real consumers? So it never amounted to, you know, as great as everyone thought it was going to be. It's fun. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's an essential part of, every media company. It's just one more thing you have to do to get your message out there.
Yeah. Over the
I
decades,
don't want to denigrate it too much at all. I mean, social media is kind of a chore for me sometimes, but it's also done great things for the magazine. I mean, it helps us sell subscriptions and get out sort of instantaneous news items that would be, difficult to do in the print magazine. One of the problems with print is the lag time is just enormous. So yeah, we can do a better job than anybody of covering big issues and in-depth storytelling and stuff like that. But it takes a while to get the message out there. So that's where social media steps in.
over the decades, how has your demographic changed from age and gender, I suppose, are the big ones. And overall growth.
Overall growth. I would say that the number of fly fishers is pretty static in the United States. During COVID, in the last 4 or 5 years, yes, there's been growth and there's been new people coming in, and that's been exciting. But there's also old people that are passing away or are unable to fly fishing anymore. So I think the total number of fly fishers has been pretty static. I hear a lot of people complaining about like all these new people coming in and crowding the rivers and stuff like that. I have not seen it. Uh, I've only seen it happen on very specific rivers, and my answer is, hey, stop going to the Madison. You know, you don't have to go to the same places every if you're crowded on this one very popular spot, that's kind of on you. There's a lot of places to go fishing. And I can tell you, I live in a state that is just loaded with fly fishermen. And when I go fishing, I don't see anybody. Hardly
Yeah.
ever. Like I float big rivers in my raft and catch bass, and there's just nobody out there. Honestly, I think, the population of the world is exploding, unfortunately, and it's ruining a lot of fishing places, but I don't see it getting ruined by fly fishers. I think my fellow fly fishers are all on the same team. And, you know, one of my big goals with the magazine to get more people into the outdoors and, off of the screens and whatever else they're doing. We need more fishing in this country, not less.
What about women? I know when I was working at the Canadian Fly Fisher magazine, we had 96% men. Do you have access to that data there?
Yep. Um, and that's kind of an interesting geographic thing. I think the number of women participating in the sport has really grown in some geographic areas. I can tell you, like in Pennsylvania, it really hasn't.
Oh, that's
It's
surprising, actually.
in,
Me.
interesting state by state, but I know, when you go to Montana and you're out on those rivers out there, it seems 45% of the people out on the river are women. It seems like you see drift boats full of females and female guides and all kinds of stuff. I don't see that too much in Pennsylvania, but I think it depends where you go and stuff like that. I think at high-end lodges, in the travel end of things, I think it's a lot of lodges I talk to, it's almost 50-50 women because people go as couples. I know you're spending a lot of money. You go as couples, and I think any successful lodge has to cater to females and make sure, that it's not some dirty old men's fishing camp, basically, you know?
Yeah, I do. I do know. As speaking of lodges, that's one of the perks is being the editor of Fly Fisherman magazine. You get to go to a lot of places and meet a lot of people. This is personal, and you can tell me to piss off, but how do you manage having to put out such a professional product while knowing all the dirt? You know all the dirt about everybody and everything. How do you manage that?
How do I manage that?
Like, how do you not take
I
an
don't,
opportunity away for somebody if you've heard things about them, but you still want to include them or not include them? How do you manage your own bias, the things that you know with what you feel will be the best product for your reader?
that is a tough question. When I was a young journalism student, you take a whole class on ethics, and they say the first thing about ethics is that you need to realize that you are biased. So I realized that, I have my own biases. There's some things I don't particularly care for, but I think I can do a pretty good job of navigating around that. Um, I guess the best example I can think of is that I don't like Euro nymphing. I don't like it at all. And I'm not going to, I don't do it. But I would say that Fly Fisherman magazine has been uh, at the forefront of like teaching people how to do it, and it's become extremely popular. I mean, we do stories on some of the very best with George Daniel and Lance Egan and Josh Miller and some of the very best competitive fly fishing guys and Euro nymphing guys have been in the pages of the magazine explaining how to do it. And I think I've done a fair job of just passing that information along and sharing the excitement. I don't think I have to be personally invested in it to do a good job of doing the story. I
Yeah.
mean, I do have my, when it comes to, I know you're talking more about people type things,
All of
but
it,
I
the whole
do,
thing.
yeah, I do have my own biases in terms of like how I want to fish and stuff like that. But, um, I realize that there's a lot of people out there with a lot of interests and, basically, in the end, this is a business and I need to do what people are interested in. So,
Yeah.
and like Euro nymphing and is selling magazines right now. People are very interested in it because bottom line, people like to catch fish. And this has been, if you want to talk about controversial things, I've been through this a dozen times with like the invention of strike indicators. And, there was a time when people couldn't stop talking about strike indicators and how evil they were. And now it almost seems, like the purest thing to do. But people will, the old cranky guys will always complain about these new, methods that make it too easy to catch fish. And from a conservation standpoint, I can see that. But if you're a young person just getting into fly fishing and you want to catch fish, you want to have some success too. So you need to balance it.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Have you ever had a particular topic or situation or subject, whatever it may be, that you knew was going to be groundbreaking for fly fishing? And it was in the hands of a gatekeeper, and you just happened to be the gatekeeper that was either going to open the gate or keep it closed?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's always like really important stories that are going to blow the lid off things. In fact, I have one in the next issue that I think is going to be absolutely epic, but it's actually, I don't want to get into
Oh no,
it.
tease.
But yeah, there's things that you know are going to be controversial, and then it like the Nocta thing. I knew it would be a little bit controversial, but I didn't know it would be that
I was
controversial.
going to ask you
So
about
I
it
get
on the
surprised
show
by
here.
stuff.
Yeah, well, you know what? I won't take it too far because I actually was going to invite you. I wanted you to be one of my people. We're going to do it into the backing episode about it.
Okay.
And I thought you would offer a really fresh insight because you and I had spoke about it when you were on your way there. I knew about it, you knew about it. We were doing the whole, do you know what I know? Do I know what you know? So don't tell me too many of your opinions here on that because I don't think it's necessarily the right show for that.
Okay.
But are you publishing a piece on it written by you?
On Nocta?
Yeah.
No, no. I mean, we did that. We went there, but I'd love to talk about it more online.
Yeah. Okay. I'll loop you in on that when we talk later. Okay.
Okay.
Has there been a topic that you've noticed in particular gets the most people emailing you or messaging or mailing you saying, letter to the editor, these are my thoughts?
Well, first let's talk about the ones that I do like. One of the interesting things is that like when I was a young editor at Fly Fisherman magazine, my boss said, "We don't do profile pieces. Nobody cares about profile pieces. We just do how to, where to, and stuff like that. Nobody wants to
Oh,
read about people." And uh, I think he just wasn't right about that.
I disagree.
Or
Yeah,
or
I
I
agree
I
with you.
think the culture has changed. So one of the things that I find we get a lot of response on is whenever we get really deep into people. And that's why, you know, if you take the Lonnie Waller story or the recent story we had on Kathy Beck or this film we're doing on Lefty, stuff like that, I think people are important in this sport, which is why what you do is so important. Like doing interviews with the people who are part of the sport. I think people love it. They're into it. They can identify with the people and they all have like firsthand experiences. Like just working on this Lefty project, we'd get so many emails and letters and stuff from people who has a Lefty story. Everyone has a Lefty story, and it's every time we do a people profile, we get a lot of stuff. and all positive, not negative.
Oh, so you do get positive feedback.
Oh yeah. Yep.
More than the negative stuff?
I think that's what generates the most positive feedback.
Okay.
But that is the interesting thing about human nature, right? Like
Yeah.
the negativity brings out 100 times more people. People are way more likely to say what they hate, as opposed to saying what they liked and appreciate. I mean, you don't need to look any farther than the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all get inundated with everything. Well, I don't like this or I don't like that. And it's like nobody cares what you don't like, but they're highly motivated to say what they don't like.
Yeah, that's all fair. Do you ever feel stuck in a corner as the editor, as far as being expected to do a lot of the same structure, have the same structure and history that Fly Fisherman magazines had over the last 60 years? Or do you feel like you have the creative freedom to kind of bump it to the next level or do something different?
I do not feel painted into a corner like what, you know, people always tell me about what they think is, one of the oh, you get to go fishing at this place or that place. They have these preconceived ideas about what the best part of my job is. I think the best part of my job is the autonomy that I have. Like, I know I work at a big company, but I have a lot of autonomy to do what I want to do with Fly Fisherman magazine. And that's the best part of my job. And the creativity that I get to have. With my art director, Dennis. I mean, we every 2 months, that's our baby, and we can do basically whatever we want with it. And we try to make sure that it's cutting edge and something that we enjoy. It's our passion. And
Yeah.
that's my favorite part of the job.
I
So I
actually
never
do
feel
get
like
that vibe. Sorry to cut you off, but I just want to make that clear. I don't feel like it's been stuck collecting dust. I really do see all the different angles you guys are taking, and I just want to kind of highlight that you are breaking outside. Sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
that's okay. No, I love the creativity. I love the team that we've got here, the people that I work with. I couldn't be in a happier place. And it's not because I mean, going fishing, catching big fish is awesome too, but no, I'm in a good place with the job. I think Fly Fisherman Magazine is in an amazing position in the industry and in the magazine business in general. And I'm loving it. I'm loving life.
I hate to get sidetracked with the magazine, but it kind of had to happen. With your timeline, is there anything else that I've missed as far as a real pivotal moment for you, an experience, an exchange, something that really helped shape you to who you are now from a fishing stance?
No, I think we've covered Jim McLennan. Like he basically created this fly fisherman, so he's probably the number one most influential person in my fly fishing life.
I love
Um,
him.
Other than that, it's like everyone that I came into contact with a fly fisherman, like the people who we've worked with over the years, and that's the second best part of my job is interacting with all of the people over the years, from like Gary LaFontaine to Lonnie Waller. Like being here so long, one of the great parts is that I got to meet all the older generation and also help to bring along the newer generation. Um, that's one of my big responsibilities too, to create a new generation of like leaders and celebrities and spokespeople for the sport of fly fishing. And I don't see myself as being that person because I'm a journalist. Uh, I'm never going to be the fly fishing expert. I'm an expert at journalism and making magazines, and my job is to just let the experts be experts. And I learned every issue of Fly Fisherman magazine, like I learned stuff, even after doing it 28 years. Like, I think it was the issue where you had the Lonnie Waller story that we had a fly tying story on. Charlie Craven had a story on The Little Bit. And so I'm just like every other reader. Like I called Charlie up and said, I need those beads. Can you send me everything in that recipe? And I'm down there in my basement tying the flies from the magazine, just like my consumers would be. And it's just funny that, you know, 35 years later, I'm still reading the Fly Fisherman magazine, learning about flies, and it's always the next new hot fly. And even after all this time, I'm still fall victim to that. And
Yeah.
then so I tied like 40 of these little flies and then opened up my nymph boxes and I was like, oh my God. I have 10,000 other flies that are probably just as good. I didn't need to do that, but I still just get excited about stuff that I read in the magazine.
Is there a trip that you're excited about that you really want to go on, that you want to write about specifically that you haven't yet?
Yeah, the big trip that I'm excited about right now is I'm going to Pluma Lodge in July.
Oh, in Bolivia?
Yeah.
Have you not done that trip yet?
I've done Secure Lodge, which is close by, but I haven't done Pluma, and this is a helicopter trip.
With Marcelo?
Yep.
I'm so excited for you.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be
excited. The
awesome.
whole experience. It's my favorite trip, apart from the steelheading.
Really?
I haven't done the heli fishing thing there, but that Bolivia Dorado trip is hands down my favorite trip.
Yeah. Like I said, I've done Bolivia before. We had a great trip, but and we, to get far upriver, we had to camp and stuff like that. I absolutely loved it. So
Yeah.
get to go back, just a different river this time.
Cool. So we'll see the Bolivia piece at the end of the year.
Yep.
Excellent. What's next for you, personally and professionally, outdoors specifically?
What's next for me?
That's a lot of Ali's, but yeah.
Well, I have a lot of outdoor passions. I don't just fly fish. I'm,
It's a rock
you
climber.
know, in my spare time, I rock climb, I ice climb. I'm leaving tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. to go ice climbing in the Catskills, which is interesting because there's a lot of like ice climbing that's like either on or right above like famous trout streams and stuff like that. I find it very interesting that a lot of the trout fishing areas in the east are also ice climbing areas.
When did you start doing that? I knew about the rock climbing, but isn't the ice climbing super dangerous?
Only if you fall.
Eh, got it. So you're
It's
leaving to
fun.
do
I'm a
that.
Canadian. I grew up in the Rockies skiing and always enjoyed winter and stuff like that. But when I moved to Pennsylvania, I found out the skiing here is terrible, but there's a lot of frozen ice and frozen waterfalls. So I took up ice climbing.
Yeah. Okay, well, it keeps you fit, I suppose.
It's pretty fun. It keeps
Yeah.
me outside in the winter because you can go stir crazy. There's not a lot of fishing going on right now, so I need to get outside. So it's a good excuse to get outside in the wintertime. I
Yeah.
love it. I'm just like it's not the athletic side of it. It's just it's so beautiful sometimes out there. You're on a frozen waterfall and snow is coming down. There's just icicles all around you, and you can hear like the tinkling sound of falling icicles, you know?
Hmm. It's
It's
magical.
surreal. It's amazing.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. If you're in the Catskills, you're right by Joan as well, FYI.
Oh yeah.
Not that I'm trying to be pushy, but I'm super pushy. And then, as far as my last question is something that I know that a lot of people ask when I was hosting Jim McLennan's writing workshop, the number one question I was seeing was, how do I get my writing in front of magazines? Sorry to put you under this sort of pressure, but if somebody did want to submit something, how would they go about doing that?
That is a very good question. I appreciate you asking that. The number one piece of advice that I can give to people is do your homework and read Fly Fisherman magazine. Uh, I get a lot of queries like just like in a day at my work, I get 3 or 4 emails just from people that want to write a story and they don't know who they're talking to. You know what I mean? They haven't done their research. Go back and read 2 or 3 of the issues of the magazine and then find a spot where you can fill in a niche. Don't just like not read it and think you can write a story. So do your homework. And then my email address and all my social media contact information is on page 4 of every magazine. Right there, I have a column. Here's me, I write in every issue of the magazine. All my contact information is there. And all you need to do is email me and say, hey, I read the magazine and I think this story would fit nicely right here. And I love getting good ideas. The problem is that I get very few of them.
Yeah, fair
But
enough.
you need to weed through them because out of, every 50 bad ideas, you get one really good one.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear, especially from you. Okay, well, I'll wrap it up and let you get back to your Eastern time zone. Is there anything that I have missed that you would like to add today?
I was hoping that we could talk about kids.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want to.
Oh yeah, the bank.
Yeah, I want to talk
Absolutely.
about this. And it's time for me to ask some questions. Let me tell you, this cover of Fly Fisherman magazine, you asked me a question earlier, like what are some of the topics where you get good feedback? I got such fantastic feedback on this photo of a mother and her beautiful daughter
Aw.
and an amazing steelhead and your story on Lonnie Waller. This was beautiful and this makes me happy and this is why I love my job.
I've got to tell you, Ross, when you guys agreed to do and very happily we're in cahoots with putting that picture on the cover, just so people who are listening and not watching know. I am very fortunate to have myself and my daughter shown in a very special moment with a beautiful BC steelhead on the cover of Fly Fisherman magazine. It meant so much, not only to me and us as a family, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of us mothers and parents in general, but I really felt like it was just taking the next step. You know what I mean? And for Lonnie, especially because Lonnie was so passionate about getting the next generation into fishing and onto our waters and understanding and appreciating our fisheries. The whole thing was symbolic in so many ways, from, once being a young woman on the cover of your magazine to now being a mother and showing that journey to being, again, in the same issue as Lonnie's article about getting younger people in, um, breaking down barriers. There's so many reasons why that cover meant a lot to me personally, and I really wanted to thank you for that. So it makes
I
me
feel the
happy to
same
hear
way.
that you feel the same way. Thank you.
I absolutely loved it. And you are a great mom. And
Oh, thanks.
I mean, um, this isn't just about fly fishing. This is about people. And just seeing you out there with your little girl just is a beautiful thing.
It's
Yeah,
been cool. Yeah.
that's what it's all about for me. I'm a grandpa
I
now, so
know. I remember when your
yeah,
daughter was pregnant. How old's your wait, you got two grandbabies now, right?
yeah. But my granddaughter Hadley's 11 and Rowan is 8. So they're a little older than your daughter, but still sort of that age category. And one of the best things I do in the summer is take them out fishing, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. It really helps you
It is
see it
so
different,
fun.
doesn't it?
Yeah, the time I spend with my grandkids is one of the happiest parts of my life, and just getting them out climbing or fishing or anything in the outdoors just brings a lot of joy to my heart. So seeing you on the cover with her and all the things that you're doing as a mother and a fly fisher all together, it's a beautiful thing. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. And yeah, like we said in the beginning, you were there watching me and Charles fall in love. So you've kind of been along for the ride.
Yeah. And it's so much more intertwined with that. Like we talked earlier about the first film that I made on time and fishing. I never would have gone time and fishing if it wasn't for Charles.
Right? You saw his big fish then.
Yeah, but I think we were at the Dean River and he showed me that picture and I was just like, "Oh man, I got to catch one of those fish. It's over." Like he sent me on the journey. It was that photo.
Oh, that's so cool. He's going to be chuffed when he hears that.
Oh, I've told him that before, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
right. Got it.
But like he sent me on the journey and still to this day, like that trip and that fish is the single greatest fishing trip I've ever been on. I'd say that was like a life-changing experience. Just not just the fish. The fish was part of it, but the people and the culture and just like the whole experience, you
Yeah.
know,
How humbling was
life-changing
that?
stuff. 2014.
But how humbling was it? Did you feel really humbled by the whole experience?
Humbled is a good word for it. It just made me realize that, our culture and our expectations and what we want to get out of life are so completely different than what the nomadic people living along the river want to get out of their life. It's just the ways that they found happiness. I don't know. The big fish made me happy, but those people just living in a gur, herding goats and stuff, and never met people that were happier. It just taught me a lot about you can be happy wherever you are and whatever you're doing. It's all about what's in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to wrap it up at that because that's perfect. If people want to watch that film, can they watch it on the website or is it still airing? Where can they get it?
It's on YouTube.
Oh,
Eventually,
perfect.
all of our stuff goes to YouTube. It's called One Path, um, and it's on the Fly Fisherman magazine YouTube channel, along with a bunch of our other films and fly tying content and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Check it out.
great. I'll link it all up. All right. Well, I will let you go. It's so good to see you. Thank you for taking the
Great to
time.
talk to you. Love
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I'll
Say hi to everyone.
I will. I'll talk to you soon and I'll follow up on the into the backing thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ross. Bye.